As promised, 4 minutes late. I'm at the state capitol in Alabama. I just did a quick Facebook Live and a quick Twitter Live because I've been having some glitches with Restream. I'll figure it out. It's good software, but I haven't used it in a few months. Hopefully, everything's working. I just got a notification from LinkedIn that it's online. So I'm here to talk about Free the Children, my new book. I have so many books. I wasn't sure if it was the latest one. I guess it is. I have 11 books on Amazon by now. So, long story short, I debate with myself what's the key issue in the country? What are the key issues in the country? Obviously, the right to bear arms. I just went back into federal court after Brune. Brune cited my case, Libertarian Party of Erie County versus Cuomo. I'm back in court on that, fighting hard. I wrote a book called The Second Amendment Works to aid in my court cases because the case went on so long. I had time to write a book about it. So I've got that issue covered. But and then there's the lockdown. I filed a bunch of lawsuits over that, one of which is still going, one of which was mooted out by the judge, no fault of mine. And I also wrote a book on that, which is on Amazon. It's just in Kindle, but it's interesting. If you're interested in the vaccine mandate, there's a long essay, 4,000 word essay attacking the logical underpinnings and scientific underpinnings of the vaccine mandate. It makes absolutely no sense. A little bit of Austrian economics in that paper too. And happy to say my son's at the Mises University this week, which is one of the reasons I'm in Alabama. So, and I'm going to be stopping by there tomorrow myself. So I wrote a book called Government Schools Are Bad for Your Kids, 2009. And it lays out the case against government schools chapter by chapter. It's short, factual, easy read. Not that much ideology until you get sort of later in the book. The first 3 chapters are about crime, sex, and drugs, which are bad. Delinquency, the delinquency as measured by a study by the Manhattan Institute. Contrary to what you might all think, rural, urban, suburban, all approximately the same rates. There's no way to escape the problems in the government school. I don't care what neighborhood you're in, how wealthy you are. But people weren't ready for the message. There's reasons for that I explain in Progressivism. But I think after 2 years of the lockdown, where first of all they closed the schools, and then they opened the schools and forced them to wear masks, and people saw the brainwashing, the leftism that's taken over the schools. I talked about propaganda in government schools. It's gotten significantly worse as leftism has sort of resurged in the last several years and really taken over the classroom. You have critical race theory. So what I want to do really is I want to just go through the book chapter by chapter. It's not going to be long. It's a hot day. Everybody's busy, I'm sure. And what I'm hoping to do is in the 23 red states. Now, let me talk about the blue states. You're not in the red state, the 23 states controlled by the Republican Party. There's the map. If you're in one of the blue states, which are colored black on purpose on the cover of the book, your homeschooling is your option, is your best option. Because if I say private school or religious school, you're going to say, well, we're not religious or we don't have money, whatever. I think you can work those things out, but the ultimate answer is homeschool, and not as hard as you might think. It's been done. It's been done by people in lower incomes. It's been done by people. It's been done by single parents successfully, as I talked about in government schools. But we're talking about the red states here. So the point of the book is it's like the Republican Party and the big conservative institutions. They're always attacking the Democrats and saying, boy, if we only had the White House, if we only controlled the Senate, you're hearing this now. If we only controlled the Congress, then we could get a lot done. Those big bad Democrats, those leftists, those progressives, those Marxists, they're the problem. Well, not really, because then you have the number one sort of socialist program in the United States is government schools, and you have a party, the Republicans, who claim that they're opposed to socialism. Why do you make attendance at these places mandatory in these states, and fund it? Fund schools where really a large percentage of the teachers are Democratic union members, who are the sort of shock troops of the Democratic Party. So really, what I'm trying to do is call out Conservatism Inc. and call out the Republican Party. But let me just go through the book. It's on Amazon, Free the Children. It's really more of a movement than a book. What I'm trying to do is if I can get 23 people, I'm going to try to hit all 23 red states this year. This is the second one I'll hit. I'll have gone to 4 of them by the end of this trip. I'm going to add 3 more when I get back to Buffalo in mid-August, Ohio, West Virginia, and Indiana. And then I'll have to figure out how to get to the states that are a little further away, but I'll do it. I'll hit North Carolina and the other states I wasn't able to get to. So let me just go through the book and explain, what's going on. There's a nice quote in the book that I led off with, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to read that because he kind of summarizes, the whole critique. A guy named H.L. Mencken, who was an outstanding writer and a libertarian, by the way. That's not well known. Mencken says the most erroneous assumptions to the effect that the aim of public education is to fill the young of the species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence, so make them fit to discharge the duties of citizenship in an enlightened and independent manner. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim of public education is not to spread enlightenment at all. It is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is its aim in the United States, whatever the pretensions of politicians, pedagogues, and other mountebanks, and that is its aim everywhere else. So chapter 1, I get right into it. Chapter 1 summarizes the case against government schools that I made in my first book. Let's see here. I'm not going to go through that now, except to say, again, crime, sex, and drugs, propaganda, mediocrity. Since the government's running the schools, if you look at the 6 or 7 or 8 different subjects where an opinion about the government or an opinion about economics or political science is critical to the course, then you begin to realize that, well, the government's really not scientifically capable of teaching these subjects anyway. So that's chapter 1. And if you want to get more details, you can go to the original book, which has the whole history of it, all the arguments for it refuted, delineated, and refuted. Chapter 2, the problem is getting worse over time. And what I mean is, the school shootings have increased. The trend towards when I talk about sex, by the way, I'm talking about sex at school. Open, explicit sexual activity at school. It's gone up. It's cited. It's continuing and probably gone up. Crime, sex, and drugs, all worse. Critical race theory. And I talk about that in the book. I'll talk about it a little later. But John and his wife, Nisha Whitehead, they summarize, if you do send your kids back to school, in September, what are they going to look at? What are they going to face? Draconian zero tolerance policies that criminalize childish behavior, overreaching and anti-bullying statutes that criminalize speech, school resource officers, police tasked with disciplining and or arresting so-called disorderly students, standardized testing that emphasizes rote answers over critical thinking, politically correct mindsets that teach young people to censor themselves and those around them, extensive biometric and surveillance systems that, coupled with the rest, acclimate young people to a world in which they have no freedom of thought, speech, or movement. So it's pretty awful out there. So chapter 3, the teachers are agents of the Democratic Party. I mean, I'm not even going to argue for that. It's true. The stats are there. They make tremendous amount of money. By the way, it's the economic impact of government schools. It's $1 trillion spent on an industry that should not exist at all, and the outrageous salaries and pensions. Look, I'm a market guy. I'm a Mises guy. I don't care if LeBron makes $50 million a year. People voluntarily gave him. It's supply and demand. There's not too many people can play. I wish I could play basketball that well. Not too many people can play basketball that well. But when you have a politically derived salary, politically derived pension, that's wrong. And some of these people are multimillionaires by the time they retire. It's ridiculous. So that's chapter 4 is your kids are being brainwashed, not educated. And this is really, again, I'm not going to go through all the long quotes, but this is really the original purpose of government schools, to brainwash. So let's not pretend that we're surprised about it. And what really bothers me about critical race theory, aside from the fact that it's false, is that it's a form of scapegoating. And okay, scapegoating is bad, but it's worse than that, because when you scapegoat race, for the problems in the black community, what are you doing? You're ignoring the real problems. The real problems, as I wrote in a book on the subject, is progressive big government, and I talk about that in the book. So, by progressivism is this massive failure. Read my book, Progressivism, a primer. It's this massive policy failure that's been harming the black community basically since 1865. There's some pre-progressive era programs that plague them, but the progressive era of World War I, New Deal, it's all in this other monograph that I wrote, which you can check out. But the point is, this is what kids are learning, this false doctrine, which really prevents them from actually analyzing the failure of the public policies that have led to a large degree of stagnation in the black community since about 1965. The schools cannot be reformed, folks. Now, I'm not going to, on this hot day, I'm not going to, and I promise to be short. Why can't they? It's explained in the book. Schools are a bureaucracy. What's a bureaucracy? A bureaucracy is an institution in which some people have power over others. So they're going to exercise that power for their own benefit, not for yours. And you could do all these elections. All the elections are rigged. I've explained that elsewhere. You can lobby the school board. Forget about it. None of that works. I advocate direct citizen action in 5 or 6 of my books. Why? Because I did the other stuff. I did the indirect action. I ran for office. I've supported candidates. I've lobbied. I filed lawsuits. When you're relying on other people to do things, you're really not going to be successful. That's why I favor direct citizen action. So, there's a nice chart in the book. Power flows down. You can maybe pause the tape and look at that. You'll kind of get the larger point of the book. Chapter 6, red state Americans should pull the plug on this failed experiment. There's nothing stopping you. There's no leftists out in Alabama. Biden's not here. Just your old Republican Party that claims to be for school choice and for parental choice and against socialism. Nothing stopping you. Pull the plug. Chapter 7 is kind of the guts of the book, the mechanics of dismantling the system. I won't go through the whole thing, but there's A through G, points explained. Number 1, though, is repeal. Well, there's no right to education. That's nonsense. I just totally destroyed that concept, that idea in the book. There's no such thing as a right to education. So the pursuing something that doesn't exist is obviously stupid. So let's get rid of that. But the main thing is to repeal compulsory attendance laws. Even if the GOP doesn't want to live up to their promises and eliminate this socialist institution called government schools, can you at least stop forcing the rest of us to use it? And repealing compulsory school laws does a lot more than you might think. It deregulates homeschool. It deregulates private school, because they don't have that hammer of, well, if you don't do it the way we want, you're not complying with our compulsory school laws. That's the key. That's what we're leading with here. We're saying that part out loud. So chapter 8 is actually pretty funny. The GOP finally has a chance to prove it is not a complete fraud. Maybe I should say what I really think about the GOP. There's a nice chart in the book. These are all the major progressive programs. Maybe you can freeze that. Since 1913. Which one has the GOP gotten rid of when they had power? When they had total power, all 3 branches of government and the judiciary. Not one of them. I bash conservatism a little bit. Will conservatives finally conserve something? Very short chapter. And then 10, really, along with 7, is kind of the guts of the book. What you could do to light a fire to the GOP and Conservatism Inc. And it goes through. There's a plan. It's I like listing stuff. It's 1 through 13. 1 through 13. Step by step. I'm a political consultant, and so I know how to do this stuff. I'm not going to do it for you. You have to take care of your own states. I'll help you if you want help, but I'm not going to come down and do this thing in Alabama. I'm just here to get the ball rolling. So that's basically it. Check it out on Amazon. I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia at the state capitol talking about the same stuff on Wednesday at 4, and then Friday at 3, Tallahassee, the state capital of Florida. Because it's Friday, I'm doing a little earlier. Check out the live stream or show up. I'll be there, whatever. I'll give you a free book. But hopefully there were no glitches with this. If there were, I'll be quite annoyed. But in any event, I did the Twitter and the Facebook. So over and out. I'll see you all in Atlanta, Georgia, Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you.